The Pacific Ocean is not merely a body of water. To the men of the United States Navy in October of 1944, it is a graveyard that refuses to stay full. It is a vast, indifferent beast that swallows ships and men without a tremor of remorse, hiding the bones of thousands under miles of crushing black depth. The salt air does not smell of brine or the clean scent of the sea. It smells of bunker oil and cordite. It smells of wet iron and desperation. The Philippines lie on the horizon like a jagged wound, a collection of tropical islands that General Douglas MacArthur swore to return to, but promises in war are often paid for in blood that belongs to someone else. The United States Navy has brought the sun to the enemy's doorstep. The Third Fleet, a massive sprawling armada of steel and fire, is hammering the Japanese positions, tightening the noose around an empire that is already suffocating under the weight of its own ambition. But a suffocating animal is the most dangerous kind. The Japanese Imperial Navy, broken but not beaten, is throwing everything it has left into the Leyte Gulf in a final cataclysmic gamble known as Operation Show Go. They are stripping their carriers of planes, emptying their flight schools of half-trained pilots who have barely learned to land, and launching waves of aircraft with a singular suicidal purpose. To die is acceptable. To fail is not. The desperate logic of the kamikaze is beginning to take root, a terrifying shift, where the weapon is no longer the plane, but the pilot himself. On the flight deck of the USS Essex, the heat is a physical weight. It radiates off the steel plating, visible in shimmering waves that distort the air and burn the lungs. It is October 24th. The morning started with the chaotic rhythm of war, the klaxons screaming their mechanical panic, sending men scrambling over flight decks, slick with oil rain and the sweat of 1,000 terrified sailors. In the ready room of Fighter Squadron 15, the fabled 15, Commander David McCampbell is not a young man. He is 34 years old. In the brutal calculus of fighter pilots, where reflexes are currency and youth is gold, McCampbell is an ancient relic. Most of the boys flying under him are barely out of their teens, their faces smooth, and unlined men who were playing baseball in high school only months prior. McCampbell is the commander of the air group, the CAG. By all rights, he should be coordinating strikes from the safety of a radio room, drawing grease pencil lines on a map, and listening to the war through a headset. He has earned the right to stay behind the lines. But David McCampbell does not lead from the rear. He leads from the front, strapped into the cockpit of a Grumman F-6F Hellcat named Mincy 3. He is a man of Alabama stock, possessed of a quiet, terrifying competence that does not require bluster. He is not the reckless cowboy of Hollywood fiction who whoops and hollers into the radio. He is a predator who understands that patience is just as lethal as a .50 caliber round. He is a professional killer in a uniform, analyzing the geometry of death with the precision of a surgeon. When the call comes over the squawk box, it is not a drill. Radar has picked up a massive formation of enemy aircraft, inbound a strike force intended to sink the American carriers and drown the invasion force. 3 large groups. The sky is about to fall. The deck crews of the Essex are frantic, moving with a desperate, practiced urgency. Fuel hoses snake across the wood and steel like black vipers. Engines cough and roar to life, spitting blue smoke and flames as inertial starters whine. McCampbell climbs into his cockpit, the familiar claustrophobia of the fighter plane wrapping around him like a second skin. He settles into the seat, strapping himself to the machine that is essentially a 2,000 horsepower engine with a seat bolted to it. But there is a problem. The chaos of the scramble means the tanks are not fully topped off. The fuel gauges are lower than he would like. He has enough to fly. He has enough to fight. But he does not know if he has enough to come home. He signals the launch. The catapult officer drops his arm, a gesture of finality. The Hellcat shudders a violent convulsion of compressed steam and raw torque, and Mincy 3 is thrown into the humid air, the G-forces slamming McCampbell back against the armor plate. He is not alone, but he might as well be. 7 Hellcats launch with him, but the confusion of the intercept separates them almost immediately in the soup of clouds and rain. 5 go one way, chasing a phantom echo. 2 go another. McCampbell is left with a single wingman, a lieutenant junior grade named Roy Rushing. Rushing is a capable pilot, steady and loyal, but the odds are catastrophic. 2 planes. 2 American specks of blue paint against the gray vastness of the overcast sky. They climb. They push the throttle levers forward, the massive Pratt and Whitney engines, howling as they claw for altitude. Altitude is life. Altitude is energy. If you are low, you are dead. They punch through the cloud layer, seeking the sun, seeking the advantage of height that every fighter pilot covets like oxygen. They break through the cloud layer at 14,000 feet, and there they see it. The abyss. It is not a standard formation of planes. It is a swarm. It is a migration of locusts made of aluminum and hate. 60 Japanese aircraft are arrayed before them, a layered wall of destruction stretching across the horizon. There are Zeros, the nimble paper-thin dancers that ruled the sky in 1942, their Mitsubishi engines purring with deadly intent. There are Oscars, the army fighters that buzz like angry wasps, highly maneuverable and flown by veterans. And there are the bombers, the Vals, and the Judys, laden with armor-piercing explosives intended to break the spine of the American carriers below. 60 hostile machines, 60 pilots who have pledged their lives to the Emperor, wearing the rising sun bandana ready to die. And facing them are 2 Americans, just 2. The mathematics of the situation are impossible. It is a ratio of 30-1. In any other war, in any other century, the smaller force would retreat. They would dive for the deck run for the protection of the fleet's proximity, fused anti-aircraft guns, and pray to whatever god listens to fighter pilots. Logic dictates survival. Retreat is not cowardice in the face of such numbers. It is sanity. But David McCampbell does not turn Mincy 3 around. He watches the enemy formation. He studies them with the cold, detached eye of an engineer. He analyzes their speed, their heading, and their discipline. And then the insult happens. It is a moment of profound disrespect that seals the fate of dozens of men. The Japanese formation sees the 2 lone Hellcats. They look at the 2 specks in the distance, and they ignore them. The Japanese flight leader, confident in the overwhelming weight of his numbers, does not order a squadron to break off and engage. He does not signal an attack. He maintains his course. He believes that 2 Americans are statistically irrelevant. He believes that no sane pilot would attack a formation of 60 planes. He views McCampbell and Rushing not as threats, but as debris, irrelevant flotsam in the sky that can be bypassed on the way to the real target. They stay in their loose V formation, cruising comfortably, engines droning in a hypnotic rhythm. They are arrogant. They are complacent. They believe they are the hunters. They do not realize that they have just flown past the deadliest man in the United States Navy. McCampbell watches them pass. His grip on the flight stick tightens, the leather of his gloves groaning against the grip. He feels a cold rage burning in his chest. He keys his radio, his voice flat, devoid of fear, devoid of excitement. He speaks to Rushing. He tells him to stay high. He tells him to wait. They are not going to run. They are going to commit heresy. To understand the madness of what David McCampbell is about to do, one must understand the machine he is strapped into. The Grumman F-6F Hellcat is not a beautiful plane. It does not have the elegant tapered lines of the British Spitfire or the sleek shark-like profile of the P-51 Mustang. The Hellcat is a brute. It is an honest, ugly, violent machine, built for a singular purpose. It was designed to kill the Mitsubishi Zero, and it does so not with grace, but with overwhelming industrial violence. It is known affectionately by its pilots as the aluminum tank. It is built tough with heavy armor plating protecting the cockpit and self-sealing fuel tanks that can take a burst of machine gun fire and keep flying. It is a factory of war churned out by American industry to crush the delicate craftsmanship of the Japanese aviation bureaus. It is the sledgehammer to the Japanese rapier. At the nose of this beast sits the R2800 double wasp engine. It is a radial monster, massive and round, looking like the fist of a giant. It generates 2,000 horsepower chugging gallons of high-octane aviation fuel every minute to produce enough thrust to drag the heavy airframe through the sky at 380 miles per hour. When a Hellcat pilot slams the throttle forward, the torque is so immense it tries to twist the entire plane in the opposite direction of the propeller. It vibrates through the pilot's bones, a constant mechanical reminder of the power at his fingertips. But the engine is just the delivery system. The heresy lies in the weapons. Embedded in the folding wings of the Hellcat are 6 Browning M250 caliber machine guns. This is the Ma Deuce. It is not a delicate instrument. It is a jackhammer that throws lead slugs the size of a man's thumb at nearly 3,000 feet per second. These are not rifle bullets. They are armor-piercing incendiary rounds designed to punch through engine blocks and light fuel tanks on fire. When all 6 guns fire at once, the recoil is strong enough to slow the aircraft down in midair. The convergence point, the distance where the streams of bullets from both wings meet, is set to create a zone of absolute destruction. Anything caught in that crossfire is not just damaged, it is disassembled. Structural spars are shredded. Aluminum skin is peeled back like fruit. Pilots are turned into memories in a fraction of a second. However, McCampbell knows the limitations of his god. He has limited ammunition, about 400 rounds per gun for the inboard pairs and 200 for the outboards. That sounds like a lot, but in the frantic adrenaline-fueled spasm of a dogfight, it translates to seconds. Mere seconds of firing time. If he clamps down on the trigger, he will be empty in less than half a minute. Against 60 planes, spraying bullets is a death sentence. He cannot afford to miss. He cannot afford to engage in a turning fight with the Zeros, whose lightweight airframes allow them to spin on a dime. If he tries to dance with them, he will die. The Zero can turn inside the Hellcat all day long. If McCampbell gets slow, he is a dead man. So McCampbell devises a strategy that goes against every instinct of a brawler. He chooses the path of the sniper. He chooses discipline over aggression. He creates a plan that requires nerves of absolute ice. He explains it to Rushing over the crackle of the radio. They will not dive into the swarm. They will not get sucked into the furball, where the enemy's numbers will overwhelm them. Instead, they will act as wolves culling a herd of bison. They will stay above the Japanese formation, using their superior altitude to maintain an energy advantage. They will wait for a straggler, for a Japanese pilot, who drifts slightly out of position, who gets lazy, who lags behind. Then, and only then, they will dive. They will boom and zoom. They will drop from the heavens, converting their altitude into blinding speed, slash through the enemy formation, fire a short, controlled burst, and then use that speed to zoom back up into the safety of the altitude untouchable. They will not turn, They will not linger. They will strike and vanish, strike and vanish. It is a tactic of erosion. It requires a patience that is agonizing. McCampbell checks his fuel gauge again. The needle is steady but low. He checks his gun sight. He is calm. The Japanese formation is ahead, a wall of metal moving towards the fleet. They still haven't broken formation. They are still ignoring the two Hellcats hovering above them like the sword of Damocles. McCampbell lights a cigarette. Yes, in 1944, a man could smoke in the cockpit at 15,000 feet while hunting 60 men. He takes a drag, the smoke mixing with the smell of recycled oxygen and sweat. He exhales, watching the wisps of smoke vanish into the air vents. He flicks the switch to arm his guns. The red indicators glow on the panel. He's ready. The insult will be answered. The abyss stares back at him, 60 pairs of eyes looking forward, blind to the doom diving from above. He tips the nose of Mincy 3 forward. The engine roars as gravity takes hold. The wind screams over the canopy. The heresy begins now. Gravity is a weapon. It is a physical force that McCampbell harnesses as the Hellcat plunges toward the green canopy of the jungle below, slicing through the thin air. The speed builds rapidly. 300 miles per hour. 350. 400. The airframe groans under the stress, a symphony of metal complaining against the laws of physics. The Japanese formation is below him, still oblivious, still droning on in their neat V shape. They look like toys from this height, but as the altimeter unwinds, they grow rapidly in size. McCampbell has picked his first victim. It is a 0 on the far right flank, drifting just slightly wide of his wingman. The pilot is likely looking down at the water, or perhaps checking his engine instruments, comfortable in the belief that the Americans are miles away. He is wrong. McCampbell closes the distance. He does not scream. He does not yell. He breathes in a slow, controlled intake of oxygen. He waits until the 0 fills the glowing ring of his gun sight. He waits until he can see the rivets on the enemy fuselage, until he can see the red rising sun painted on the wing. At 800 feet, he squeezes the trigger. He does not hold it down. It is a short, violent spasm, just a fraction of a second. The .650 caliber machine guns on his wings roar, spitting fire and lead. The plane shudders violently as the recoil hits, but the aim is true. The tracers streak out, converging on the 0's engine block and wing root. The effect is instantaneous and catastrophic. There is no Hollywood explosion, no slow-motion ball of fire. There is simply physics. The heavy rounds smash into the delicate engine cylinders, shattering steel and spraying hot oil. They tear through the fuel tanks in the wing. The 0 shudders as if hit by a giant invisible hand. A gout of black smoke erupts from the cowling, and then a flash of orange flame. The wing snaps off structural failure induced by massive trauma. The plane begins a violent, tumbling spin toward the ocean below. The pilot never even had time to look up. He's dead before his brain can register the sound of the gunfire. But McCampbell does not watch him fall. This is the discipline of the heresy. To watch the kill is to die. Target fixation is the killer of aces. The moment he releases the trigger, he pulls back on the stick. Hard. The G-forces slam him into his seat, his vision graying at the edges, as the blood drains from his head and pools in his legs. The Hellcat groans again, converting that massive speed back into altitude. He shoots straight up, climbing away from the Japanese formation like a rocket. By the time the other Japanese pilots react, turning their heads to see where the fire came from, McCampbell is already thousands of feet above them, a small blue dot disappearing into the blinding glare of the sun. Lieutenant Rushing follows suit. He dives on an Oscar on the left flank, his guns barking a short, deadly rhythm. The enemy fighter disintegrates under the impact, pieces of aluminum fluttering in the slipstream like confetti. Rushing pulls up, rejoining his commander in the safety of the perch. 2 down. 58 to go. The Japanese formation begins to waver. You can see the confusion in the way they fly. The smooth V shape ripples. Heads are swiveling in cockpits. Radios are crackling with panic. They do not know what hit them. They did not see an enemy squadron. They saw nothing but empty sky and then sudden death. They assume it was anti-aircraft fire from a ship hidden in the clouds, or perhaps a mechanical failure. They do not conceive that the two specks they ignored are systematically dismantling them. McCampbell and Rushing reset. They circle high above, circling like sharks in a tank of blood. They watch the Japanese calm down. The enemy flight leader, desperate to keep his formation together for the attack on the fleet, orders them to close ranks. They tighten up. They press on. They are trying to ignore the ghosts that just killed two of their own. It is a fatal error. McCampbell waits. He checks his instruments. Engine temperatures are good. Guns are clear. He lights another cigarette. His hands are steady. He tips the nose over again. This time, the Japanese see them coming. A few of the rearguard pilots spot the diving Hellcats and scream warnings over the radio. But physics is a cruel mistress. The Hellcats are coming down at 450 miles per hour. The Zeros cruising at 200 are standing still by comparison. Even if they turn, they cannot match the speed of the American dive. McCampbell picks a bomber this time, a fat, slow target sitting in the middle of the formation. He ignores the Zeros trying to turn their noses toward him. He knows they are too slow. He is a blur of blue motion. He lines up the bomber. The rear gunner opens fire, small pops of light sparkling from the back of the enemy plane. The bullets ping harmlessly off the Hellcat's armored glass and heavy engine cowling. McCampbell ignores them. He is focused on the wing route where the fuel is stored. He fires. The Ma Deuce hammers. The bomber's wing erupts in flames. It rears up, stalling, and then falls out of the sky, a burning torch marking the path of the American attack. Rushing takes another fighter, blowing the tail section clean off, and again, before the Japanese can bring their guns to bear, the two Americans zoom back up, climbing into the vertical trading speed for altitude, untouchable, unreachable. It becomes a rhythm, a grim industrial assembly line of death. Dive, fire, kill, climb, repeat. It is grueling work. The cockpit of the Hellcat is a sauna. The sun beats down through the plexiglass, turning the interior into an oven. Sweat runs down McCampbell's back, soaking his flight suit. His eyes sting from the salt. His arms ache from the physical effort of wrestling the heavy fighter through high G maneuvers. Every pull-out from a dive crushes him into the seat, compressing his spine, straining his heart. His flight suit is drenched. His gloves are slick with sweat on the stick, but he doesn't stop. He cannot stop. The fleet is behind him. The men on those ships are depending on him. For 90 minutes, the battle rages. 90 minutes is an eternity in aerial combat. Most dogfights last 5 minutes. 10 minutes is a marathon. 90 minutes is a lifetime. The Japanese formation is no longer a formation. It is a chaotic mob. The discipline has shattered. Fear has taken hold. They are no longer flying to attack the fleet. They are flying to survive. They break into defensive circles, the Loughbury Circle, trying to cover each other's tails. But McCampbell and Rushing are patient. They wait for a plane to break the circle. They wait for a mistake. And the Japanese, exhausted, terrified, and outclassed, make mistakes. McCampbell is ruthless with his ammunition. He counts every burst. He knows he is running low. He stops firing long bursts. He fires snaps, half-second pulses. He targets engines. He targets cockpits. He is performing surgery with a machine gun. He watches a Zero try to climb up to meet him, hanging on its propeller, slow and vulnerable. It is a gift. McCampbell rolls over and dives, putting a burst into the exposed belly of the enemy plane. The Zero explodes. It is a fireball that engulfs the sky for a moment, a violent orange flower blooming in the gray. The wreckage falls past McCampbell's canopy, close enough that he can see the burning debris. The Japanese are demoralized. They have lost count of how many planes have fallen. They believe they are under attack by a whole squadron, maybe two. They cannot comprehend that it is just two men. The sky is littered with falling debris, with parachutes, with burning wreckage. The ocean below is scarred with the splashes of dying machines. The Bay Ong of the Emperor has been scattered. The insult has been repaid with interest. McCampbell checks his fuel gauge. The needle is tapping the red line. He checks his ammo counters. They are almost empty. He has only a few rounds left in the outboard guns. He keys the mic to Rushing. "We're done here, Roy. Let's go home." They turn away from the carnage, leaving the survivors to flee back to the Philippines. The silence that returns to the cockpit is deafening. The roar of the guns is gone, replaced only by the steady drone of the radial engine. But even that is uncertain. The fuel is critically low. The return flight is a tense game of energy management. McCampbell leans out the fuel mixture, starving the engine just enough to keep it turning without wasting a drop. He glides where he can, trading his precious altitude for distance. Every mile is a gamble. Every minute is a prayer that the engine won't cough and die over the unforgiving ocean. The carrier Essex appears on the horizon, a small gray slab in the endless water. It looks like salvation. McCampbell enters the landing pattern. He drops his hook. He drops his flaps. The hydraulic whine is the only sound he hears. He is exhausted. His hands are shaking now, the adrenaline crash hitting him like a physical blow. He lines up with the deck. The landing signal officer, the LSO, waves the paddles. Cut power. McCampbell pulls the throttle back. Mincy 3 settles onto the deck, the tailhook snagging the number 3 wire. The cable stretches, groaning, and drags the heavy fighter to a halt. The engine sputters and dies. Not because McCampbell turned it off, but because it is out of gas. There are literally fumes in the tank. The prop ticks to a stop. The silence is absolute. The deck crew runs out, chocks the wheels. They are cheering. They have heard the radio chatter. They know something big happened, but they don't know the scale of it. McCampbell unbuckles his harness. He is stiff. He can barely move. He climbs out of the cockpit, his legs feeling heavy, his boots ringing on the steel deck. He walks to the side of the plane. The crew chief is already there, looking at the gun ports. The black soot stains on the wings tell a story of violence. The fabric patches over the gun muzzles are gone, blown away by the first shots. McCampbell looks at the intelligence officer, who runs up with a clipboard. "How many, Skipper?" the officer asks, his pen poised. McCampbell rubs his face, smearing oil and sweat. He looks back at the empty sky. 9, he says softly. "I think I got 9, and Roy got 6. The officer stops writing. He looks at McCampbell. He looks at Rushing's plane sitting a few yards away. 9 in one sortie. It is impossible. It is a number that defies belief. Most aces don't get 9 kills in a whole war. McCampbell got 9 in 90 minutes. The gun camera footage is pulled. The film is developed, and the proof is there. In grainy black and white, the destruction is documented, one after another. Zero's Oscars bombers, exploding, burning, falling. It is the single greatest record of aerial combat in the history of the United States Navy. David McCampbell is awarded the Medal of Honor. He becomes the top Navy ace of the war with 34 confirmed kills. But on that day, October 24, 1944, he did not fight for medals. He fought because 60 men insulted him. He fought because he refused to yield the sky. He proved that the spirit of the warrior is more potent than the machine. Years later, the war ends. The Hellcats are scrapped, melted down into aluminum ingots to build cars and houses for a booming America. The ocean washes away the oil and the debris. The Philippines are free. The world moves on. David McCampbell grows old. He fades into the quiet dignity of civilian life. A man who once held the power of a god in his hands, but now just wants to fish and remember. But the ghost of Mincy 3 remains. It flies forever in the annals of military history, a blue phantom diving out of the sun, a reminder of the day when two men stood against the abyss, and the abyss blinked.